All right, so if you're here, it's because you saw the title and you have either already seen the broadcast from Thursday, or maybe you're just finding out about this whole thing and are just trying to get some clarification and maybe hear a different opinion. Either way, welcome. I'm going to very briefly summarize what happened for those that maybe are just now finding out about it. And it's that on Thursday, before the 100 Thieves and TSM game, the LCS had a segment that they aired, basically talking about the whole double lift, Reggie team at TSM controversy, the drama that happened, throughout last year. I'm gonna preface this whole thing by saying that first of all, nobody was in the dark that that whole thing happened. I think almost everybody knows about that drama and the whole falling out between Double Lift and Reggie, and the back and forth, and the alleged potential lawsuits, and everything else, and how that handled, which kind of fizzled out and basically amounted to nothing. But obviously a lot of that stuff that happened last year was pretty controversial and pretty nasty. Well, the LCS did a segment on it in the downtime between games before 100 Thieves and TSM played their match. And I'm hesitant to say this way, but there are a number of people that feel like the LCS should not have done that and that was out of line. I completely disagree. I think not only was the LCS well within its rights to make that segment when they did, I also think that it was a good idea for them to do it, and here's why. So first of all, unless you're a very new viewer to the LCS, then a lot of the people who've been watching for a long time will know that the LCS is not one to shy away from controversy, and it isn't one to not have drama. The early seasons of the NALCS, when it was still called that, had plenty of drama, way worse than this, many times worse than this, and it had drama like every day. You couldn't log on to a broadcast, or you couldn't get on the internet without seeing a post about some random crap that happened between X, Y, or Z team, or X player had said or did this, or this happened at the player house, or the teams are saying this about each other, or a coach got fired for this. It was nonstop drama. In the first couple of seasons. Like, let's not pretend that this is anything new or controversial. Right? Like, this isn't, like, on the scale of 1 to 10 of controversial, this is like a soft 4. A 5, maybe. It's a 5. Most people already knew about Reggie in terms of, how he acted. It's just, having people publicly say it and, air their grievances, obviously was, kind of, solidifies it as being very real rather than this sort of amorphous controversial thing. But it's not like game breaking, news, and it's nothing crazy, to be honest with you, in the grand scheme of things, for this to even happen. And it's not even crazy for the LCS to air it. Like, the LCS has talked about crazier stuff in the past. Just look at any of the first couple of seasons and just look at all the stuff that happened, like every single time they had a broadcast of all the drama that was happening between players. And you'll know that this is very tame. I also thought that the segment was interesting in the way that they aired it. It definitely grabbed your attention. Like, oh, LCS definitely has a stance on this one, or maybe casting wise, that she has a stance on it. I don't know what the LCS's standpoint on it, other than the fact that they aired it. But the tone was very interesting. The way they worded it was very interesting. It was very harsh. It was very fair. I think it was fair. It's hard to argue that it wasn't. It's categorically accurate, especially given what we know about the whole thing between them. But I think bigger picture wise, I'm glad that they did it. And here's why. For the last couple of years, it really feels like the league has pushed for the interactions between coaches and teams and players and analysts and interacting with the fans, for everything to be very gentlemanly and professional and non-confrontational and tame and all that. And to be honest with you, that has really gotten boring. it feels good to have something controversial to talk about that's like not something wrong with the league in terms of the way they're running it, but something just genuine that is generating conversation about all the stuff that happened. And technically it's old news, but it is fun to talk about it. It is in an odd way. And the LCS is not the only league in the world to do this. Every major, every professional sports league, every major region has something like this. And they talk about this stuff and the way they run it. Nothing is really, I don't say nothing, but very, very, very little is off limits. There's a common saying that goes, if you don't want your dirty laundry aired out, then don't get your clothes dirty in the first place. And with the way that Doublelift and Reggie and TSM handled the whole thing, they don't have a right, even if they wanted to, they don't have a right to say that people can't talk about it, that the LCS can't make a segment on it. What happened was very public. It was public knowledge. They went to battle in the public sphere, and so that makes it fair game. And the LCS, I think, is well within its rights to make a segment like that, and I'm glad that they did it. You can attach whatever moniker you want to as, oh, well, they're white knighting or grandstanding or this, that, and the other. I'm just glad they did it because it was fun to watch, and, I don't know if it was an intended side effect, whether or not they actually meant this to happen, but people tuned in for that game. That game had some of the highest viewership we've had in the LCS in years. And because it was so controversial, now a lot of people are going to be wondering, oh, well, is the LCS going to say anything like that in the future? Or will they have some more spicy content? Well, maybe I'll have to tune in. What happens when players start, jawing at each other and saying stuff online? How does the LCS, it creates intrigue. It creates interest in the league. And that's exactly, what they need at this point for the LCS. All press is good press. Like, it doesn't matter like what kind of press it is. It's just good. If people are talking about the LCS, then they're drumming up interest for it. And, that's really, in all honesty, what the LCS needs right now. Now, yes, there are arguments that you can make very, very easily. Like, oh, well, it wasn't really the time or the place for the LCS to take care of that. Or, oh, well, isn't this just old news? Why are you bringing this up? Or, hey, it's not very professional of you. And, I mean, you can make a number of arguments. And, yeah, maybe that's correct. But isn't it more interesting to have something to talk about now? Like, you go on Reddit and you go on Twitter, this is all anybody is talking about. Like, the fact that the LCS aired this segment, and then now, as a response to that, people are wondering like, oh, well, I wonder what Doublelift is saying, or I wonder what Reggie is saying as TSM released a statement, and people are getting more invested in this, new storyline that has developed in this, particular controversy that has come out. And I think that that's inherently good for the league because it gets people invested. It gives them a reason to care about the players, about the teams, and what the LCS is doing. So personally, I see nothing wrong with what the LCS did. I don't think they did anything wrong. They didn't break any rules. They're just, they're playing matchmaker. They're trying to drum up interest in the LCS when it really needs it. Especially given the way that the broadcast was set to go. I think it's starting to improve a little bit in terms of viewership and pacing and the way the content feels. I think it feels good right now, but they definitely need stuff to keep people interested, and I think that was a decent way to do it. Now, there's an argument to be made too, as well as the tone is like, oh, well, the LCS was very aggressive in the way that they talked about this and very harsh and one-sided. Maybe that's right, but they have the right to be that way because they were also part of the investigation into Reggie, and Reggie is not a particularly likable figure within League of Legends and the LCS sphere. He's just not. There are some people obviously that like him, but I think most people find Reggie to be a very reprehensible figure. And, obviously the LCS, to a certain degree, more or less, has stuff that it stands for. And, maybe this is their way of subtly signaling to Reggie that they don't particularly care for him to be involved with the league, and they would rather see somebody else at the head of TSM. I'm just speculating now. I don't know what their motive to do other than create interest in the league would have been, but I certainly think that it's working. So we'll have to see what the further fallout would be, but I don't have any problem with it. I think it's a good idea, and I think all the people overreacting in the forums and online, I think they're not seeing the bigger picture, or really understanding like what this does for the league, or really have an understanding of the history of the league either. I think people have tremendously short memories when it comes to stuff like this, especially knowing that like, hey, this is not the first time something like this has happened, and it's not going to be the last either. And I hope it's not. I hope we get more stuff like this. you don't want something that would cause fans to fight each other, but like you want like healthy, rivalries. You want healthy support for teams, both in person and online. That's what gives people a reason to be invested. And so I think just to a certain degree, the LCS has kind of been nerfing the league, not just competition wise, but also from a basis of the way that players and teams interact with each other, where it's less. It's less interesting. It's a little too soft. It's a little too polished. To some degree, you want some ruggedness. I mean, look at the NFL. Like, you have fans that, genuinely they don't like other teams and they're very supportive of their team and they're very passionate and the viewership is high and the turnout is great, for in-person games. And I think for the LCS, you can't really ask for anything more than that. I think that's exactly what you would want. So, I think people just need to kind of put things into perspective, like, just a list of things like, hey, first of all, the LCS isn't the only league to do this. Second of all, it's healthy. Third of all, this is not the first time they've done it. They'll do it again. And I think people kind of just need to take a chill pill. Also, it wasn't that bad. Like, the segment wasn't that bad at all. It was reasonable. Yeah, it was harsh. But you know what? So is the investigation, and so is getting accused of anything like that, and so is being found guilty of doing stuff like that, and going after people to that degree. It's that's harsh too. But unfortunately, that dirty laundry got aired publicly, so that means it's fair game. It's in the public sphere. Obviously, I understand some of the counter arguments to all this, and as to why maybe the LCS shouldn't have done it. But yeah, who cares? They did, and I hope they do it again. So. Interested to see what you guys will think. Obviously, you'll tell me in the comments how you feel and whether or not you think LCS was right about this. Obviously, this has been a topic for very healthy discussion, so interested to see where everyone is at on this whole thing. But that's all for me. So until next time, buy potions, get control wards, never run out onto the rift without a friend, and of course, be good to each other. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.